This episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Damon Tate of Virtue, as well as now of For the Fallen Dreams. This was done outside of the venue when they were opening for the Plot New about a month ago at this point, I believe. And, we kind of hadn't really seen each other. I mean, we've seen each other a couple of times, but we've never really done an on-record thing. And it's always funny because I always end up doing something with Damon when he's got a show to play, so we don't really talk as long. And the irony is maybe not even 4 days probably before we actually recorded the in-person, we chatted for like an hour and a half, and I was like, we should have just fucking recorded that. But Damon is one of my longest friends that I've known in the music business, music scene, however you want to put it. With him being of Virtue, and it's been weird to see the band traverse their career because I think they kind of did everything that a lot of young bands do. They just kind of oversaturate. They sound really good, but you can clearly tell the influences on their sleeves. They kind of do everything really well, but also not well at the same time when it comes to the business side of things. And it's been really interesting to kind of see Damon over the last, I'll say, 5 or 6 years really become a part of this thing. I think his time in For the Fallen Dreams, filling in on bass for the band and touring with him, I think really kind of afforded him the ability to pick, Jim and Chad's brains a little bit about, having a sustained career in kind of a metalcore band or in metal. And I think he's one who just constantly wants to learn, constantly wants to grow, not only as a musician or as a business person, but just, I think, as literally a person. And I know Damon and I have a lot of great conversations, off record and so forth. And it's the one I enjoy kind of shooting the shit with because it's just, it's honest, it's real. And I think that's something about our relationship that I've always admired about it is that we kind of don't bullshit each other. So in that capacity, I think it's always fun to get to talk to him, and any of my friends really on this show, where I think you kind of get a small glimpse of who these people are and why we're friends. It was funny when I was listening back to this the other day, I suddenly remembered that there was the homeless person that went by and was trying to ask Damon and I should say, for some money, and Damon just very stoutly was shaking his head, no, don't even ask. I'm on record right now. So I thought that was really funny and amusing. But I kind of want to talk about something else, kind of going on a little bit. I decided I'm no longer working at the bar I was working at, and I decided to take that opportunity to also kind of take a break from drinking for a little bit. My wife and I have decided to go for a sober August. Shouldn't really be that hard, I don't think, honestly. And with it, I've decided to kind of take the time to not take any excuses for myself of like, oh, I don't have time to do this because the sleep schedule gets thrown off when I work at the bar or, you know, whatever. So Today was the first day of me deciding to do something in some capacity of working out and eating better. So today I'm drinking water, as I have been pretty much all day. I ran I'll use running loosely. Ran a little over a mile today to start my day. Woke up at 7 and did it. Just didn't make any excuses. I literally set my alarm and was like, I'm going to get up. I'm going to go run before I walk my dog. And it felt good. I realized my cardio is severely lacking, which kind of sucks considering actually that I used to, that was what I did in high school, is I ran track and I ran a lot of sports. So it'll get there. It's day one. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but the fact that I got up and did it, that's what you got to do. You just got to kind of put one leg in front of the other one, literally, to run. But really just kind of making no excuses and deciding to just, flip that switch in your brain to just kind of change and make new habits. So let this be maybe a motivating factor for someone. You don't need to wait until the first of the year. You don't need to wait until a specific holiday or after this thing. Just wake up one day and or before you go to bed, make up your mind that tomorrow is going to be the day you're going to do it and start making better habits. So I am making better habits, and I think a really good habit to get into is to talk to your friends a lot more. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with my friend Damon, and I'll see you all on the other side of it. This is the first in-person I've done since the pandemic. Yeah.
Hey!
So this is this feels weird. It's kind of funny because I was supposed to do one with someone recently, and I was like, I'm not worried about being in person or being around people because I work at a bar, and secondly I've been going to shows, but just the thought of that, you don't think of how in all of this getting firsts back again.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of I was telling Devin, everybody else that I've seen around here, it's there are people and friends and bands and everybody else that's I haven't seen since 2019 in person. I talk to them all the time, text or, internet or anything else, but it's not the same. It's when you can actually see somebody and be like, wow, I physically have seen you now. You've grown up, you've done this, you're doing this with your life now. It is interesting. It definitely gives you a new perspective, and I don't know. In some ways, it's nice to have a reset. In other ways, obviously, economically, and the rest of the world is a little bit more of a shit show. But
well, I think for those that don't know, because sometimes since these are just more conversations, it's kind of weird because I don't really have anything ever prepped anymore. But it's in light of us, talking the other day, we're actually friends outside of this,
yes,
and have been for a very long time. It's one of those thinking, as you were just saying, some people I haven't seen you since this, and I almost kind of think of just the evolution and change of you as I've gotten to know you since I first met you when you were doing a virtue, when I feel like you were still in high school, honestly.
It was close to it. It was definitely close to it. But no, the same thing. We've seen this scene here in Michigan and all over the place kind of come and go. People grow out of it, whatever it is. And it's to still have those constants, even through all of this, it's I don't know, it's a testament to yourself. It's a testament to the artists that are still around making music because they truly love the form. They love being able to express that. And it's now more than ever, I would say that catharsis is needed. It's that energy that is so palpable. When you have these shows, they could be 100 cap, they could be 50, they could be 1,000, but it's electric, man. You get those people in there, you get to see them face to face, and it's just it's nuts.
I think something that's been interesting, kind of been thinking about talking and just kind of thinking about the overall journey of your band and you, and since the last time we talked, because we weren't even necessarily talking about your band, because at the time, the signing at the time of you with UNFD hadn't happened, or hadn't been announced, I should say. You were with playing for the Fallen Dreams, and it's interesting to even just look back at the little pieces of that where it's you were just filling in, but now it seems based on social media, which is when you see it on social media, it's true.
Yes.
That it seems like at this point, you're at least helping out as a fill-in member or something at this point. But just how far the journey has taken you. I mean, at that point, you've toured internationally.
Yep.
And like when I think about that, it's like, a lot of the people that, you've talked about, of the people, the constants and all that kind of stuff, it's like, they've all had that journey but I think the thing that separates them is like they did it at such a young age, and here you are like all these years later, and it really is more an testament, I think, to the perseverance and just not giving up in spite of however bleak or whatever it may be. But also I think about, and this is something I think you and I like inevitably always end up talking about, but I just think it's interesting, never letting, it's a quote Amberlin, don't take friendship personal, and realizing that to a degree there needs to be more of a business mind to this whole thing. And sometimes you have to realize that even if people are your friends and they're your best friends and you come up together, that like maybe it just doesn't work. Like the people you have can't help you get where you want to go, and it's gone as far as it is, or it's gone as far as it can go with that entity as it is at the time. How hard has it been to sustain a career as long as you guys have, and to finally, for lack of a better term, to kind of reach a lot of the things that bands want to do when they get together, and all the dreams of like, we want to tour, we want to, go international, we want to do these things, but ultimately kind of realizing like, I didn't get to do it with the original people I thought I was going to. Is it kind of a bit bittersweet, or is it still...
Yeah, it can be a little bit bittersweet because they're your friends. They're your best friends growing up. It's when you, in its infancy, have a dream, man. It's...
Hold on, I apologize. I can't, because I know that laugh is going to be in there. We were doing this in the van, and a street person came up and was trying to hit up Damon and I for money, and Damon just very, very adamantly shook his head no, but kept answering the question. But I couldn't keep my composure, so that's why I'm laughing.
Hey, man.
Sorry.
I get it.
Out here in the streets.
He's hustling, man. I get it. But, in reference to your question, yeah, it can be bittersweet. And I would say an older version of myself, if I held on to that specific notion, it would impact me a little bit more. But yeah, like I was saying before, it's like when you first start out wanting to play music or be in a band or be involved in this scene, it's like, yeah, it's your friends. It's people that you're hanging out with. You kind of... for lack of a better term, it's like it is literally dreaming. It's like, man, we could probably do this, we can do this. But then along the way, as you start to understand the process more, you start to understand what really goes on in on the business side, because people do forget it's music business. Yeah. There's still an element of, there's the financial side, there's a responsibility that everybody has to take. Most bands are usually one or two people that are driving the bus, and the other ones are passengers, but they may fulfill a role. Like, we talk about sports all the time. Yeah. And it's like, not everybody can be LeBron James or Michael Jordan. You got to be Scottie Pippen, or you got to be Horace Grant, or you got to be whatever it is. Understand the role, be able to play that role, and be a contributor to that. But, along the way for us, it's like, I'm still friends with everybody that, used to be in our band. Mm-hmm. We've had member changes, we've had lineup changes, because life happens. Priorities change. I respect it, I understand it, and we keep it moving. We've also been in a position where we've had to have those hard conversations with, this isn't working, we can't get to where we want to be, and it's best for us. It's kind of like an intimate or romantic relationship, just with...
It's not me, it's you.
Exact. Or no, in some cases it is you, and it's just, that's just the way it works. But at the end of the day, it's fulfilling to be able to, like I said, for us to sit here, to be able to, for me to still be, I guess, on a quote unquote like upward trajectory, or be able to achieve things that I've wanted to do. It's like, I've never been the biggest believer of like destiny or fate or anything like this, but I have always been a person that was brought up where it's opportunity. You take advantage of that by working hard, putting yourself in a position to be able to capitalize, surround yourself with the right people. And those right people probably sometimes might not be your friends, but they have similar interests in mind to get you to that next level.
It's interesting you say it like that, because I feel like there are times where it's so weird, because like sometimes I feel like such a dick when I'm like, in the business, and I'm like, I'm not really in the business, but I'm on a different side of it. And at times it parallels kind of the band thing where it's like, oh, you come up, you get like these opportunities, you crush that opportunity, maybe get another one. So it is sort of like being in a band. But the thing that I always find interesting is like sometimes I feel like you have there's this sense of competition that people put on things like, well, I can't give you more from this side of things. I can't give you this information because I had to earn it this way, or like I'll give it to you, but remember that. So when I call in a favor, like I feel like there's a lot of that in this business to where at times like it makes you not want to trust people because you're like, okay, no one just does things because they want to be nice to me. Like there's got to be some semblance
an
of
agenda or ulterior motive or no, and that for me was probably one of the hardest things to swallow initially. Like I would say I would say you know how I am. It's like I don't like to brag or anything else, but like when you do experience some success, there are always going to be people that it's like, okay, let's see what we can get out of this or how we can spin this, or they might dangle a carrot in front of you and be like, hey, if you can do this for me, and it's like. It doesn't have to be that way, and it sucks that it still is. But you just have to understand it. It's like, okay, this might be how the game goes. I don't have to necessarily do that myself. We've gotten this far without, for lack of a better term, like bending over for people or just straight up kissing ass and just like being insincere. Like that's, we start the band. It's like to be a better version of yourself, of virtue. It's to not fall into those traps or anything else. Do the best that we can, and I guess let the chips fall where they may, because I'm sure some people, hey, they would sell their soul to be the next big thing. But where is that going to leave you in the end if you have no friends, if you have no family, if you have no real supporters or anybody to relish in those memories with?
I think that's the thing that gets interesting about this, and I don't know if it's like, I don't know if this industry kind of preys on the fact that it gets a lot of its talent from young people that will do that, will sell everything because of the future. I live in the present. I'm the shit. Like I get everything now. Like you don't think about 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So an industry like this, I feel like kind of preys on young people making stupid decisions like signing 5, 6, 7 record album deals, doing 360 deals, things like that. Like all the horror stories we've heard over the years. But I wonder if to a degree it's in the delayed gratification of getting these achievements and these milestones for you, that having them happen at a later age has allowed you to, I don't want to say appreciate it more, but be ready for it more and to understand what it looks like. I think in some of the conversations that we've had, like not on anything, but I think something that was interesting is, you had made a comment of like, based on what we're kind of looking like, we're not going to be the band that goes out and plays 170 shows a year. We're going to do less is more, quality over quantity. And I think that's a mentality that you don't get until you kind of get further on, where, you hear so many musicians like the Jostas of the world and so forth going like, my kid's 22, 24. I played a show in some bumfuck city somewhere for $75 and almost got robbed and missed my kid's birthday, or I missed, the death or the, all these things. And I'm reminded actually today as I was listening to it, a line from Heartsick where it's like, all the funerals and, all these things, they all look the same. And you're just like, the parties and the funerals all look the same. And it's like, I feel like that's such a thing as I get older that I realize that it's like, time is, you only have so much of it. And like to give it away to things that aren't going to fulfill you in some capacity, like just aren't worth it. And I feel like that's something that I see you guys, or at least you, I'll say, doing in your career in this band, like at a later age, where so many people are like, oh, we have this, we're signed now, we're touring, like fuck it, like let's do it all. And you're like, if it don't make sense, it don't make sense.
Well, absolutely. And I will say this, there is a time and a place to just get out there, play shows, get the reps, because that's another thing with bands, younger bands, people that I come in contact with. If they ever ask like, hey, do you have any advice, do you ever what's the secret sauce? And it's like, there's kind of really isn't one. It's all relative, because some people blow up instantly. Some people it takes a little while. Some people never get there at all. But it's like, it's all going to be a different adventure. But the one thing that I can say, at least for us, that has benefited us the most is that we kind of are in a little bit of a gray area. We benefit from more of the internet age and like social media. We also benefited from coming up in a time where it's like, you just got on the road and just, came whatever may. Like, you might have played a show to 2 people one day, 200 the next day. cut your teeth that way, because now you know, okay, if I'm playing a show with, random band A or death metal bands or hardcore bands, you're going to learn how to impress people. You're going to learn how to become kind of desensitized to rejection, to these things. Whereas, if something's handed to you and there's been no, for lack of a better term, like pressure, there's no stress. Yeah. When you do run into that situation, albeit on a higher scale, you're not going to know how to react. And then your fall is going to be so precipitous that you might not be able to come back from it. And you'll be permanently jaded and probably never want to actually pursue maybe music or even something like that, like whatever your passion that you'll have is in the future, because you just automatically got everything that you needed.
It's funny, I was talking with Justin from X Sleeping with Sirens a couple of weeks ago, and it was so interesting because, going to a lot of shows and going to, Tin Can pre or post shows, you always see him there, and I just never knew who he was, but everyone's always like, oh, you guys should have a conversation. I'm like, okay. Didn't realize he was in a band at all, or what band he was in, because that was kind of an era where, that band, I'm not the target. I was not the target demographic, and when we were talking a couple weeks ago, I was like, so what are you doing? What projects are you involved in or something? Because I just can't imagine you being like, and I'm done. And it was wild because he's like, yeah, no, I just, I did the thing, and I don't really write anything. I don't really play. And I'm like, really? The thing that you were so passionate about and got to experience all these things, there's not a part of you that misses any of it, not even just the creative of writing. And he goes, what's the point? And he goes, I'm not gonna go in a band, I'm not touring, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And I was just like, that's it was so weird to hear someone talk so blasé about it, yeah, that's the thing I did. And but I'm like, but you were a professional musician. That means that you have to possess these abilities, these skills.
It kind of goes back to, though, kind of what I said. When you're looking at the dynamic of a band, and I'm not going to speak for him or anybody, it's just some people, when you experience those heights, you fulfill something where you're like, this is a chapter.
Side quest unlocked.
Yeah, exactly. This you have that part. When that part is done, you're like, I'm satisfied. This chapter of my life, I can look back at it fondly. It was wonderful. It was great. I probably will never achieve that level again. It was such a moment that you kind of almost want to leave it intact. And then there's the other side where it's nobody know. I don't know what his role was behind the scenes. Because what I was going to reference is, are you a driver or are you a passenger?
Right.
Because if you're a passenger, and this is not denigrating anybody, I understand this too to a degree with various jobs or roles that I've had over the years. It's you kind of realize okay, when this ride's over, the ride's over. You're just going to enjoy it and take it in, soak it in. But when you're the driver and you're going to have that itch. You kind of have a screw loose where you're like, this is done. I'm going to start the next thing. And for him, maybe he's doing that with something else in his life. It might not be music. It might be pottery. It might be
not totally far off.
Something like that, painting or whatever it is. But that for him, that could just be it right there. So.
I think it's funny because the other night you and I had talked about doing fulfilling roles, how weird it is. It's something that I've oddly been fascinated by, mainly because we're in the really great sports spot right now, playoff basketball. Right now, as I'm recording this, the game 2 of the Celtics Warriors game is about to start in 3 minutes, and it was so great because one of my favorite players that I love seeing for Golden State, even though he kind of had traveled around for a hot minute, was Iguodala. And dude hasn't played all postseason. Comes out game 1, and he's that man that he always is in the fucking playoffs and in the finals especially. And it was one of those where I'm there's something to be said, I feel about people who know how to fulfill a role. And I feel those championship teams you see in sports, my Braves won this last year, and our star went down middle of the season, and everyone's y'all are done. And then our GM made some moves and put together a great team that bonded and hit it at the right moment. But it was full of people who knew, I'm not the guy, but I can be the guy tonight. Yeah, I can be the guy for this little bit. And it's crazy when you see that, because I feel there's a lot of people in life that it's either A or B. They either oh, I'll never get to be the guy, or I'm only the guy. And I'm like, sometimes like every relationship is different, and I find it fascinating to just kind of be like, you need to find where your role is, and like your role within different dynamics and different situations isn't the same. And I think to me, it's in understanding that and being able to look at those different relationships and see how you hopefully help people become the better versions of themselves. To me, that's where I think a lot of growth and potential really comes through. It gets unlocked actually in people, is when you realize like what you're good at, like not your purpose necessarily, because I think people are like, well, that's your purpose, and it's like, no, my purpose isn't necessarily to play second fiddle to someone, but maybe like I see potential in someone else, and my goal is to actually unlock and set you up for success, because down the road maybe you'll be able to kind of facilitate something for me as well.
Or even in the case of just, look, man, it's human beings, how we operate in the world and in this ecosystem, it's symbiotic. It's like you had mentioned before, it's like, I'm sure, we've all had the posters on the wall, whether it's sports, whether it's musicians, actors, whoever else. That's such a 0.11% of people where it's like, if I can help set you up, in a case, if you're a Stockton to a Malone, if you're Pippen to Jordan, if you're Wade to LeBron or anything else, it's like those people understood. They're like, I was the man, I can be the man, but at the same time, it's if Jordan has success, we all have success.
100%.
It's especially with you're talking about Golden State too. It's like that 2015 team. People don't talk about this a lot. It's like, Iguodala got Finals MVP, but it's like you look around and it's like they just had a bunch of dogs. Now we're not going to talk about the fact that half the Cavs teams was injured and LeBron still dragged him to 6, but
I think that's like the one thing to me, like sometimes like it's so weird because like Drake said it best. Music and sports are so synonymous because we want to be them and they want to be us, and I constantly think about that all the time because I feel like I get pigeonholed so much for like just like I'll talk about sports and people are like, what do you know about like basketball? And I'm like, dude, I've been watching like I was having a conversation the other night where I was like, it's crazy. Like right now I feel like I'm watching the 4th generation of talent coming up. Like last year I went to a playoff Hawks game and I got to see Julius Randle and the Knicks and all the young players they had. I got to see Trae Young and John Collins. We went to a Spurs game and I got to see Zach LaVine against the Bulls, and DeMar DeRozan. I mean, I know he's a little bit older, but like, yeah. And it's like we went to New Orleans right before the pandemic, and I got to see Zion's first game against Ja Morant. So it's like in the last couple 2-3 years, I've gotten to see the new talent that I'm going to be watching for the next 10-15 years. And when people want to bitch and complain, it's almost like music. Like, I feel like we as fans, quote unquote, of something, we're like the fucking worst gatekeepers of this shit. It's like, instead of being like, man, isn't it cool to see fucking LeBron doing what he's doing, 19 years in the league, going for his 20th, probably going to play with his kid at some point, like, just doing things because he's having fun and wants to. Instead of talking about that, everyone's like, well, he ain't the GOAT. The GOAT's Kobe. And I'm like, yeah, but y'all shitted on Kobe when Kobe was happening. Like, no one appreciates what you have until literally it is gone. If you need something, man, go ahead and get it. You want them rolls, huh?
He can't eat them.
I'm actually going to grab a water. Do you want one?
Oh, you're good. I'm good.
But, it's, and it was 8:15 or 8:45?
8:15.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got a couple minutes.
This fucking guy.
Yeah.
Strapped up.
Yep. Got you out in the streets.
Shooting that happened last night here?
I didn't hear about nothing.
Someone said that there was a shooting downtown Grand Rapids last night. It was on Facebook or something.
Well, you gotta believe it was on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey.
Strapped up.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where, like, I think that's the thing that, like, kind of sucks is, we don't really get to appreciate anything that happens in the moment because we're too busy looking back on what was and trying to feel like we're a part of something or that we had ownership of something that we never did. And I think that's, like, such a bummer. And honestly, why I kind of think I hated going to shows and kind of having to listen to music of, like, the scene because everyone was like, well, this band's the best band or this one or this whatever. And I'm like, who gives a shit, man? Like, does it make you feel something? Do you enjoy listening to it?
Enjoy what you want to enjoy. Be there. Be present. You can almost in a way as a consumer, a show goer, and it's like I do this all the time. It's like you just go there, and for a while, it's like you're analyzing the live show. You're looking at the lights. You're seeing what kind of components. And it's like no, just take a moment. step back, realize what made you want to do that in the first place, and just take it in as a whole. And unfortunately, again, the gatekeepy stuff, it's like anything else. It's bad behavior and bad tendencies. You know, the same people that are the gatekeepers now were the ones that were kept from, you know, the palatial estates when they were coming up. And it's if they broke through, they're like, I'll be damned if I let somebody take my spot because it took me this long to get here. And it's like, no, what you need to be doing is you need to show people that it is a hard road, but it is possible. It is possible to expand our community and uplift these people. Because again, testament to like some of the larger bands that are still relevant to this day. I was talking about it, you know, with Slipknot.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's business, whether it's the band's personal preference, whatever the case may be, the fact that they're a band from, you know, our childhood that continually will bring new bands, bring different bands, bring bands of different audiences, to expose them to a mainstream conscience, that's not only does it benefit them, because guess what? Those guys are in their mid to late 40s, early 50s, and if your fans are only mid to late 40s, early 50s, you're going to burn yourself out real quick. You need the younger audiences in order to sustain what you're doing, but at the same time, you're also introducing and reintegrating, getting new people into it that want to play guitar, that want to play bass, that, in essence, want to have that same dream. And you're saying it's, you know, it can be like a lottery sometimes. You're just going to say, hey, if you're really built for this, if it's really meant for you, then there might be a roadmap and it is attainable. If this is just a moment in time that is meant for you to cherish, then you soak it in, realize what that is, and then pass that on, you know.
I feel like the interesting thing is I feel like for as adventurous as people and artists can be, like, you know, it was funny, like, speaking to Slipknot, like, going to see them the other night, and it's like those older songs just hit so differently. Like, they're so cathartic, they're so like, it was crazy because I was like, you know, they still had hooks, but I was like, the fact that literally like one of the bigger songs of the set is them doing people equal shit, and I'm like, literally your hook is people equal shit. And I go, so if that's the thing that ends up being your hook, and I go, the fact that you could literally have an arena full of people who were like, here it is, yeah, screaming people equal shit with you, and I'm like, and that was your second record after you had to, been hot-shotted basically, and never had to open for anyone, never played clubs, like played arenas from that point forward.
Oh, they tried to open, or Coal Chamber tried to have them open, and that didn't work.
It did not happen, no. But it's funny to me, like, when you look back at it, though, but then it's, like, in conjunction when you listen to the rest of the set of, like, you know, even stuff off of the last couple records that are more, got the big chorus and all this kind of stuff, it's like, I don't think the band could have sustained, just how they played and toured, because they would literally drive themselves into the ground, beating each other up, lighting each other on fire.
Wasn't it Cities had like two knee surgeries?
Yeah, I think, and like an ankle.
Hip. Yeah.
Yeah. You mean Kelly Osbourne's daddy?
Hey.
Baby daddy? Hey, gotta get that money when the Slipknot money don't come around. But it was like one of those, like, after seeing that and thinking about the career, I'm like, I don't know that this band could have sustained, but it's like, you know, I don't know if that band, if they would have put out, like, Before I Forget, around the first two records, I don't know if the fans would have been like, nah, y'all sold out. And maybe there was a little bit of that even at the time, but I think about that all the time. It's like, dude, you got fucking 8 people, a DJ, a sampler, like, all these people. How would you not have, like, all these influences coming through? But I kind of think it's funny now, because, I mean, you look at a band, like I was reading today, Kerrang shit on the new Memphis Mayflower record, saying, like, well, they didn't really change, and they went back to the roots, and someone was just like, so they went back and got heavier, which is what fans wanted, but, like, if a band does anything different, well, they don't change enough, but when they do change, they change too much. Like, there's always this in-between that no one ever can find a happy medium for, but I feel like Bring Me is, like, one of the few that has and can, and people are just kind of like, all right, that's what they do, and it's fine. But I feel like even in your guys' sound, like, it's changed. Like, we were joking the other day where I was like, you're like, yeah, you know, when we first came out, I was like, Misery Signals. And you're like, yep. I was like that. And I was like, for me, that's what made me, like, be like, when I saw you, it was like, this is nice to see you guys, you know, find a band that kind of scratches that itch for me locally. But to see where the sound has gone and it's continuing to go, I think it's great. But I also feel like at times I wonder how often you're now the one that's probably, like, it's all Damon's fault. Actually, it's probably Tyler. Probably Tyler and I joked about that recently, where I was like, "Oh, dude, I fucking hate you. You ruined one of my favorite local bands because you didn't sound like."
Sorry, Tyler, you're not Nick.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
And he was like, and that's why I thought it would be funny to actually talk to him because I feel like that's got to be weird where it's like you get the member changes, you're one of the only people and Mike that's left. So I would feel though that since you're the more outgoing one out of the two of you, that people would be like, you're the problem. You're why everyone left. You're why everything changed. It's your ego and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like that's got to be something you probably had to wrestle with a little bit of just the criticisms of what people don't actually know is going on.
There's some of that. And this is a testament to Tyler because we kind of look at this band as like almost 2 chapters, really. There's Nick, what we did with him and the moments that we've had. Like our new drummer, Ryan, like we were, he had never heard our first 2 records. So we were showing him to. He's like, "You guys sounded like this?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "This is insane." I was like, "Yeah," but again, it's a moment in time. Like I make jokes all the time. I'm like, "Man, my left hand stopped working probably like a couple years ago." But with Tyler, he's taken it in stride. It's like he understands. He's like, any band that you're joining to that's already established, already has a fan base, already has a specific sound, and especially for that style, like the Chae Halud, Poison the Well, Misery Signals, that kind of thing. That fan base at the time, dude, they're kind of unforgiving. It's like if you weren't in that box in those parameters, then it was nah. But thankfully, we've done our best. We've had a little bit of backlash, but he's just that damn good to where it's going to go, oh, okay, never mind. I'm going to shut my mouth now and just support it, or you're going to find something else and, keep it moving. So
I know you and I could keep blabbing for a while because we did the other day. But you got to go and get ready for this show. Kind of last question I'll ask you. We've talked kind of about legacy the last couple of days that we've been going back and forth, and just old days, old bands, all these old things. Has it sunk in maybe for you when you look back that you kind of have become maybe that band that influenced someone that maybe you're starting to play with, or they're like, I saw you when I was 7, 8, 9, like whatever, and like seeing you guys is what made me want to do this. Like, I know that's like a really weird question, but I mean, it's like for me, the band Camilla that used to be from here, it's like they were a band that like when I saw them and after going to see shows, I was like, I didn't know a local band could be that good. And like to see them literally playing and opening for all like the big bands and being like the direct support for them. That was one of those where I was like, it can happen. Like that was the first time I was like, you can actually be a local band and be this good and put out this kind of quality music and maybe in some instances perform the headliners and outdraw the headliners you're there to play for. And to realize that on a local level that a band can have that kind of an impact. I mean, you've been around long enough that like that could have been you. You could have been playing for someone at some point. But like, has it happened? Have you thought about that? Like, just the fact that you could have impacted people to like pick up an instrument.
Oh, absolutely. And we've had people on tours that have came up to us where it's like, hey, I was listening to you, and especially a lot of this has happened with Tyler as well because a lot more of our worldwide and states and everything else picked up when we got Tyler, and there's people that came out. They're like, hey, we have Heart Sounds, we've heard the EP, we have Salvation, we have all this. We've just been waiting. Patiently. Unfortunately, we didn't get this version, but it's still a version that this is like, we're happy that you guys are here in this form. And I'll tell you, this is a quick story. When we went to Europe for the first time in 2017, went to Manchester, met a friend of mine. This dude had our EP as a sleeve, like a full sleeve. I'm just like, and that's the kind of thing. It's like, first off, we'd always get little offers, be like, oh, you guys want to come overseas? And we're like, cool, but there was no logistics. There was nothing behind it. And to get over there and not really know what to expect for anything, because like we had done touring, but we never done something on that level. And you kind of realize like the power of the internet, the age and time that we're growing up and have kind of came into our own where you can go into a show and you're like, I've never been to England, I've never been to Ireland, I've never been to Germany and all these places, but you're showing up and there's 50, 100, 150, 200. We played a show in Austria that, Pyramid Scheme, their, sellouts like 420, 430. There's 500 people, and it's us and 3 other bands, and they're like, you guys are the thing. And it's like, it's crazy, man. It absolutely is. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps you motivated and keeps you realizing, like, we're still in a moment. We're still in that magical phase and process. And we don't feel like, and this is all of us, I can speak for Mike, Tyler, myself, and Ryan, where it's like, if you can do all that and then still kind of feel like, I won't say unfulfilled, but like just that there's more to break off, it's going to make us work that much harder, work that much smarter, and try to maximize, the time that we have left. Because, again, we're not Metallica, we're not Slipknot. Most bands maybe don't even want to acknowledge this or realize this. This is a finite thing. Yeah. It really is. There will be an end at some point. When that happens, I'm not sure. It's not going to happen today. But when it does happen, we're going to look back and you're going to realize, like, hey, we put everything we fucking had into this. We got farther than 99% of most people do. And we're not going to ever take that for granted. And hopefully influence some people in the process so that, hey, maybe the next person that came up, maybe they did come to a Virtue show. And now you're in the next Sleeping with Sirens. You're in the next Slipknot. You're in the next, If we can do that, if we can be a Pippin to somebody else's Jordan, that's cool too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually Jordan to Pippin, but... where can everyone find you or anything you'd like to plug online?
Absolutely. Facebook, obviously, of Virtue. You can find me if you want to have my personal Instagram, ov_Damon. The band's at of Virtue on Twitter. Follow us on TikTok because we got one of those now too, making funny little videos.
Mike's about to put his Crocs in sport mode. He's ready.
Mike's about to get it in. We're about to go get it in. We just dropped 2 new singles, Hypocrite, Sinner. Go jam both of those. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, any title, any DSPs. DSPs. Look at that bullshit industry lingo.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for doing this, and there's that.
Hey, no problem.
So that was my conversation with Damon Tate, again from A Virtue, and now officially for the Fallen Dreams. Let me go to all the For the Fallen Dreams stuff. They dropped a new single. A Virtue's been dropping new music. I believe their new label mates on a Rising Empire record, so I mean, obviously makes sense. Keep it all in the family. I know Damon has worked with the Heartsick camp as well, working on some of the tunes and helping co-write some of that stuff. And I honestly wouldn't be too surprised if that was something maybe Damon does more of down the road, is kind of co-writing with people. His influences are very vast, and his ability to write within those different kind of styles is very evident. I mean, listen to some of the new Virtue stuff, and there's a lot more kind of R&B influence on it. You listen to some of the work he did with Heartsick on Desperate and Broken. Listen to the track he did with the Heartsick guys over there with Desperate and Broken, and you'll hear kind of how he's able to mimic sort of their sound, a little bit of the Seven Dust sound that kind of brings out this giant chorus for Clint to sing over on the chorus section. But I think he's an insanely talented dude, and it's no surprise to see that this band is doing as well as they are and making calculated steps to doing what they want to do. Like I said earlier in the intro, this is a band that when they started, they played every local show, any show they could get on, they were always on, kind of oversaturating. And I think now, and I think Damon actually said it in the chat, was more of the, we want the quality versus quantity approach now with the band. And the band people are older, and it's not necessarily as easy or fortuitous to just be like, we're packing up in a van, we're gonna go hit up this show 5 states over to play to nobody. Like you can't really do that anymore. Like when you get to a certain level, you got to take it seriously, and you got to kind of play the game a little bit, for lack of a better term. But very much enjoyed my time with Damon. Maybe one of these days, like, we'll do something when we're not sitting at a venue and he doesn't have to play and doesn't have to do other stuff. Because I think if you were to hear some of the conversations that we actually have one-on-one, I always walk away just feeling very motivated to do better, to want to succeed, and being proud of my friends. So maybe we'll do another one soon. Now that more, the For the Fallen Dreams thing is kind of lining up, and some new music's coming. Maybe we'll get him back on and do something a little more in depth, maybe. But all that said, if you'd like to keep up with Damon, you can keep it real simple and just follow him at OVDamon on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to keep up with A Virtue, you can find them at Of Virtue on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And For the Fallen Dreams is at For the Fallen Dreams on Facebook, and Twitter and Instagram are at FTFD Band. And yeah, just do that. Look for all the new songs, new music coming between both bands. Damon is, like I said, a very busy guy. If you would like to keep up with the podcast, it's simple. Go over to BrewSpeak Pod on all your socials. You will find us. We pretty much are the only thing that should pop up at that point. And if you would like to support us monetarily, you can go over to our Patreon and subscribe over there and support the show monetarily. You can get access to early episodes, audio, video. I do bonus content over there as well. So yeah, go check it out if that's something you're into. All of it pretty much goes right back into the show in some capacity because things cost money. And lastly, if you want to email me or let me know that the show sucks, whatever it is that you want to get in touch with me to do, you can do such over at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. I want to thank our podcast sponsors once again, as you heard in the beginning of the episode. Rockabilia.com, use our code BREWtally at checkout, take 10% off your total purchase order. The Bean Bastard, go to thebeanbastard.com, pick up some delicious coffee. Head on over to Buffalo, New York, if you are in the area, and check out the Brick and Mortar store. Lovely little coffee shop. And last but not least, On Point Pomade, use our code BSP15 at checkout and take an extra 15% off your total purchase order. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week, where our guest is Justin Van Hook, formerly of Sleeping with Sirens. That was a fun and interesting chat. Definitely a long one that covers a lot of different ground. It's kind of an amusing story how Justin and I actually got linked together to do the episode, but very much looking forward to bringing you that one. I will see you all next week.